he actually was very willing to pay a very high COV for the house. And I actually advised him against it because I cannot in good conscience let my client pay that kind of COV.
This is JJ Ong. He is a songwriter slash producer in the music industry, a poly lecturer, a freelancer on Fiverr, and he also helps companies strategize and elevate their brand with marketing strategies. Apart from those, JJ is also a licensed realtor. He has been helping his parents who are in real estate for over a decade with digital creatives, marketing and admin matters. But since last year, JJ has decided to focus on the real estate industry, helping clients and friends with their real estate transaction needs. In this video, we'll be asking what should buyers look out for when they are looking to buy a property.
So first question, what should you find out even before you do a viewing?
Right, I think the first thing is to find out the purpose of why you are buying a house in the first place lah. Because houses come in many different shapes, sizes and location, and there is no perfect house for everybody. There's no one size fits all. So I think the most important thing is to ask yourself, what is the purpose of you buying the house? Then if you understand the purpose, then we can go down to the details like, oh, what location is good for you, what layout is good for you, and vice versa.
Isn't it just a purpose for that I want to buy a house to stay?
Yes lah. So generally, I think buy a house to stay got many reasons. So like some of the very common reasons that people want to buy a house or shift house is that they want to upsize, they want to downsize, first timer getting married, or first timer got married, bought house, but then realized that, hey shit, now I got 4 kids, then I need to move somewhere because I want to go to this primary school, that primary school. So the purpose is important. So for example, right, if your purpose is you want to move within 1 kilometer of a certain school, then maybe the layout not as good is not so much of a priority for you.
So first thing, you have to understand your purpose lah.
Correct.
What's the next step?
Okay, so once you know your purpose, right, then there are a few things that people look out for when they go for home viewings lah. So number one is the efficiency of the layout, right? So in the market, there are different types of HDBs and condos with different layouts, and the ideal layout is one that there is as little wasted space as possible. So there are some layouts with like weird curvature, weird corner that usually people will try to avoid because it's not usable space. Or layouts that the balcony is just like damn freaking big one, you know, then not very useful lah sometimes, right? Yeah, so layout. And then something that people always look out for is also the facing. So when it comes to facing, generally for people, they like this thing called north-south facing, right? The reason why they like north-south facing is because if the window is facing north and south, right, you don't get the east sun and you don't get the west sun. So there is no direct sun, the sun doesn't come in, but you get the residual sun, which can still be very, very bright.
Okay.
Yeah, so for example, my own house is north-south facing, but it's still very bright because I just get sun from everywhere except for the east and the west.
Yeah, my house is actually facing the west.
Sort of, yeah, a bit. Yeah.
So in the evenings, it will get quite hot.
Correct. But the good thing is that there's no one rule fits all, right? That means not like, oh, Kelvin, your house is not north-south facing means it's bad. Because for you, thankfully, right, even though your window is facing the west, you have a lot of a few blocks and trees helping you block the sun. Yeah, so it's not so bad.
Okay, so after that, right, how do we determine what's a good location? Like, so the first, just now that you mentioned a school. But other than school, what are the things that we should look at?
So I think this goes back to the purpose. Like for example, maybe you like a very prime location like Bishan, right? But you work in Joo Koon, you know, or Pioneer, very far. So maybe Bishan is not an ideal location for you. But generally, when it comes to location, right, just some general advice if you're thinking about what they call exit strategy. That means after 5 years, you want to move or you want to upsize, downsize kind of thing. What's the sellability like? Near MRT, near transport nodes, near supermarket, all these kind of amenities, right, always is a bit more ideal than if you are further. That's the general rule. Of course, again, no one size fits all, but the nearer you are to MRT transport nodes and malls and hawker centers, right, generally it's a bit more desirable. So every location has its own pros and cons. Obviously, there is no like perfect place. So again, where you are and what you want out of the location largely depends on your purpose law.
So let's say if you can choose a property
Resale, yeah.
location, right? Which location do you think is the ideal place for you?
For me personally, I think ideally, right, if say I'm buying a resale flat, it is within the vicinity of my in-laws or my parents, cause I want proximity grant, right? That's number one, right? And number two, I think it has to be near some form of MRT or some form of mall, because we need to do our grocery shopping and vice versa. And my wife takes public transport to work, so I think being near at least a bus stop or MRT is very important.
Okay.
And being in somewhat of a central location, because for me, I basically run everywhere in Singapore, right? So being somewhere in the middle allows me to travel to every corner of Singapore without feeling like it's very, very far, so that's for me personally lah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, a word from today's sponsor, Webull. If you are someone who can only invest like $100 or $200 a month, you may find some of your favorite stocks to be too expensive to buy. But don't worry, because here's where Webull can help. First, Webull supports fractional trading for the US market. This makes investing a lot more accessible to individual investors like you and me. So for the US market, instead of having to buy one entire share, you can now buy with as little as $5 or 0.01 share. To trade fractional shares on US stocks, all you need to do is change the order type to market order. Then you can switch between buying in US dollars or in amounts of shares. Second, for the Singapore market, all you need to do is change the lot type to unit share. And now, you are able to buy with as little as one share on eligible stocks. And third, Webull makes investing super affordable as they have one of the most competitive pricing on the market. For US stocks, they are only charging 0.025% of the trade amount with a minimum of just 50 cents. And for Singapore stocks, it's just 0.05% of the trade amount with a minimum of $1.60. Or if you are a new user, you get to enjoy 3 years of commission-free trades for the Singapore market and 1 month of commission-free trades for the US market. But of course, it's important to always research the stocks that you are buying. To do that, you can open up the stock page, head over to the company tab, where you will first see a financial brief for the latest quarter, some key indicators such as return on asset, return on equity, net margin, and so on. Further down, you can also find some quick summaries of the financial statements, such as income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. There's even a peer comparison feature, where you can compare how the company is doing as compared to its peers. Right now, Webull is running a few promotions. For the welcome promo, if you make an initial deposit of $500 or more into your accounts and complete one US buy trade, you will first get 5 free NVIDIA shares worth $10 to $500 each. And for my viewers who use my exclusive link to sign up, you will also get 2 additional NVIDIA shares. Next, you can get up to $2,950 worth of NVIDIA shares by depositing $100,000, complete 10 US buy trades, and fulfill the maintain requirements, or subscribe at least $100,000 to Moneybull and maintain the funds till the end of July 2024. Lastly, there's a new transfer in promo from which you could get up to another $10,000 worth of NVIDIA shares and 3-month commission-free trades for US stock trading. This is eligible for both new and existing users who sign up with my link in April, initiate and successfully transfer more than $5,000 worth of shares to Webull. With that being said, let's get back to the video.
So is there like a perfect HDB estate?
I really don't think so, but there's no perfect HDB estate, because say for example, somewhere right that has like very, very high connectivity, say somewhere like Serangoon or Bishan, you have your Purple Line, Circle Line, or buses to a lot of places. But there are also pros and cons, because imagine you're at Serangoon interchange or like Toa Payoh interchange in the morning, right? It's like really packed as heck one. So there is always pros and cons to everything. So if you are somebody that likes more quiet, more peaceful, like I was walking around your estate is really very peaceful, but what you're sacrificing is it takes a bit longer for you to get somewhere, to the MRT.
Actually, it's not that bad, because like for Singapore, right, even if it's far from MRT, you can actually take like a feeder bus, that kind of thing, to get to the nearest MRT within 15 minutes, that kind of distance. So not too bad lah.
Correct. Apart from the actual location, I think every location is good one. There's no such thing as a bad location, because we're in Singapore, right? But every location is good. But I think what is important, right? The reason why we are having this conversation in the first place is because there is no such thing as a bad location, but there are ideal units and less ideal units. So, for example, in this estate, right, there will be units that will be more sellable, that will be more comfortable to live in, and units that are less comfortable to live in. So then that goes into a deeper analysis of, okay, I like this location, even though it's not very near MRT, but it suits me. I like the peacefulness, downstairs got a coffee shop. But then in this estate, you need to go for that is more comfortable to live in, more ideal to live in, not just for your own stay, but at some point, if you're going to sell the place, it's also easier to sell. Yeah, so some of the attributes we look out for, your neighbor profiles, how near it is to the public areas, like there are some units, right, that directly face the pavilions, so pavilions are very happening one. Sometimes people go and play badminton, sometimes people have like weddings, sometimes people have funeral. So if your unit, say level 3, directly facing the pavilion, every day is going to be a party for you if there's a party downstairs or there's something so if you move far away because you like peace, but then every day there's some wedding downstairs, there's some like karaoke, there's some like tai chi downstairs, then maybe not so ideal lah.
Actually, I stay near a pavilion, so I can feel that. So when we are doing house viewing, what are the questions we can try to ask the seller? And also, like, wouldn't it be hard to ask the seller stuff? Like, or you can ask, like, is a neighbor noisy? They say, oh, it's not noisy, like, but actually it turns out to be noisy, kind of neighbor.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, right, as a buyer, whether you have an agent or not, you will unlikely be able to talk directly to the seller most of the time because the seller will be usually represented by an agent. Yeah, so there are people out there who buy themselves, right? But when it comes to selling, most people will have an agent because it's actually very difficult to list up a property yourself. But the buying part, there are people out there who buy themselves, right? So you will most likely be talking to the seller agent, and the questions you ask them have to be smart in a way that you know that if there's something bad about the unit, they're trying to sell the unit, like they cannot lie to you, they won't lie to you, but of course they will try to feature the good things of the unit lah. Yeah, so I think some of the things is you just have to be very observant while asking the questions, and also while you're viewing the place, to be very observant of the surroundings lah. So certain things like whether it's near rubbish chute or not, like you can see yourself, kind of thing, and certain things like whether the unit will heat up during the sunset or whatever. What people will do is sometimes if they really like the house, right, they will come back for a second viewing at a different time to see what the condition of the unit is like at a different time. Yeah, something like that. And some of the questions that you will usually ask is, well, how long has this unit been on the market, and if this is the first owner, right, and stuff like that. So the reason why you ask that is because you want to know how long the unit has been on the market. If the unit has been on the market for a very, very long time, then I think it's your responsibility as a buyer or your agent's responsibility to help you investigate further. Because if the unit is very good and the price is right, it usually fly off the shelf one lah, So if the unit has been on the market for a very long time, there are usually a few reasons lah. Like maybe the unit has some attributes that is not very ideal, or the unit is actually very good, but the price that they're asking for is like way above market. So a few of these considerations.
Okay, so like when you're doing house viewing, right, the first thing you step into the house, what are the things that you should look out for?
So I think prior to the viewing, what you can do is you can ask for the layout, the photo of the layout from the agent lah, if it's not already on the Property Guru listing. And some of the people, they do renovations and they might change the layout a bit, like, where they can. So first thing I guess is to check whether the layout, the original layout, is it the same as the house you're viewing? Yeah, because there are people who buy 4-room flats, then they combine the 2 common room into 1 big room, entertainment room, or things like that. And that might not be efficient for you because you have 2 kids, you want 2 rooms for 2 kids kind of thing. Yeah, so that's one of the things to take note. And the second thing to take note is, I guess, the condition of the unit lah, because if it's very, very not well maintained, that means the purchase price will not be the final figure you see, because you will likely need to spend quite a bit of money to redo the place, right? Then you have to think about how you possibly can, say, negotiate the price down, or maybe go for another unit that is better maintained, so you can weigh your options a bit lah. And if it's a unit that is very, very well maintained, like the renovation is pristine and everything, then you also need to make preparations that the asking price, right, is going to be higher than other units surrounding that is not as well renovated.
But when you are viewing, you have already seen the price, right?
Correct. So when it comes to pricing, right, like most of the people, they will find the listings on Property Guru, SRX, vice versa. And there are actually a few different types of listing prices lah. So there is what they call negotiable, there is starting from, and there's another one called view to offer. So view to offer is basically you view, then you negotiate from there, or you talk from there and see what is the seller agent strategy here in terms of like getting the place sold. But let's talk about negotiable and starting from now. So starting from is basically you go up. So if let's say I list my unit at 700,000 starting from, that means when I come in to offer, what they're expecting is nobody comes in below 700,000. Yeah, so you have to be very careful because there are some units, right, that you see starting from 700,000. Then you see the past transactions is like, it's actually very, very close. Right, then you'll be like, how come so cheap? Then you realize, it's starting from, right? Starting from is a strategy that sellers might use to try to get a higher bid, right? And negotiable is like carousel lah. The person lists $50, then after that you say like, I want $20, kind of thing lah, right? But of course, when it comes to a house, you negotiate based on usually past transaction data.
How do you check for your neighbor profiles? Because sometimes you always see all those kind of horror stories where the neighbor always make noise. This kind of stuff in the middle of the night. Is there a way to check from the seller?
Okay, so this one is a hit or miss lah. Yeah, it's really a hit or miss. If you're really, really interested in the unit, I think at some point, right, when you're really ready to put down an option fee, you can talk to the seller agent and say like, I'm really keen in a unit and but maybe if you don't mind, you share with me like honestly like how is the neighbor profile like, right? And are there any noise and whatsoever? But I think the fact of the matter is that if we live in a community place, whether it's a HDB or condo lah, there will be things that is not within our control, right? Maybe for example, I have 3 neighbors and they are perfect. Then after I move in, all 3 of them sell. Then the neighbor come in is all like very noisy. The kids run around and bang 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 every day. Then it's really we cannot control, right? But what we can control is certain things like facing, layout, the surroundings, amenities, and whether the house itself suits our lifestyle.
So the other thing to look at when viewing a house is Feng Shui. So I think that is a very important thing to be aware of.
I think there is a decent amount of people in Singapore that look at Feng Shui when they buy a house. But I think if you are a believer, then definitely you get your master to take a look lah. But if you're not a believer, I think it's good to know some basic things, right? And to know the sellability of it, right? So for example, the very, very common things is like, if facing sharp corner, it's like generally not very good. If you are near some form of religious place or hospital, sometimes like people avoid, depends on which school of Feng Shui you belong to. Toilet directly facing master bedroom is also a teh for most Feng Shui people, right? So I think these basic things you can just keep a lookout because there are, I guess, enough people out there that care enough about Feng Shui that like it might be a small factor that affects you when you are going to sell. Yeah, but if you're not a believer, then just buy the house that you feel is the most suitable for you. Yeah, if you are a believer, then you have to work with your agent to find the best house for you. So like I had a client a while back that the house must face north-south like 90-degree one, like 1 degree off also cannot one. Yeah, because the Feng Shui master say lah basically. So the Feng Shui master will come down with us to every viewing and he will say like, this unit blah 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 blah, good. So basically, if the Feng Shui master say good, right, then you go already.
I think actually like it depends person to person, but I feel like it's better to believe than not believe. That's what I think. When me and my wife, we went to see house, right? My wife, she stayed in a certain house, right? She will straight away get headache kind of thing. So she's a bit more sensitive to this kind of, I don't know, what is it? Chi?
Like energy things.
Energy kind of thing. So when she stepped into the wrong house, she I don't feel good. She can leave already. So for this house, we didn't see the Feng Shui when we first stepped into the house. But then after we bought, my uncle was a Feng Shui master, so we asked him to come and see. So he said, this house is actually not good for you. Because the facing of the house is, I don't know, it's called water lah. which direction? No, north direction. So it's water kind of thing. According to him, like, it can be fixed in a way. So for example, sometimes you say the toilet can't face the master bedroom kind of thing.
Right.
So you can put them in front of the toilet.
Something like that, yeah.
And for me, he said, oh, your element is fire, but your house is water. So to overcome this, you can put a lamp in the middle of the entire house, so to pull your qi.
I mean, so disclaimer, like I am not a Feng Shui expert or whatever, but what Kelvin is talking about is this thing called remedy. So as with most things, we want to fix it from the get-go rather than remedy it. So if you can find a unit that is good for you, rather than after that trying to remedy it, is usually better lah. But I would say when it comes to these kind of things, right, whether you believe in Feng Shui or other forms of like this kind of energy things, right, I think what's important is trust your gut, right? Like for example, you say your wife go into the unit, then it's like, oh, don't feel very good, then don't buy, you know, because there are I have been in situations where I had a client, right, who was looking for a house around Bedok area, and we finally found a unit that like the facing was perfect. There's a high floor, no west sun, no face of truth, you know, near MRT, layout is like super efficient. It's like one of the rarest unit in the market. Then they went into the house. I thought like done deal. But then when they came out, they told me that both of them didn't feel good when they were in the house. Like, you know, just felt weird, right? So they decided not to go for it, and ended up they went to buy another unit that is not in Bedok, but is also very, very good lah. But of course, it took them a while because good units are really very hard to find. Yeah, so I would say then they are very happy with the unit, the new unit, right? Like next week gonna collect key. So I would say trust your gut, because when it comes to this kind of energy thing, right, how you feel affects your daily life, affects your you know, day to day.
Yeah.
So trust your gut.
Okay. Okay. So when we talk about the interior. For exterior, are there any things that we should look out for?
Yeah, very important is facing. So like just now I mentioned, right, if you are buying a unit, you have to ensure the facing is more ideal lah. So for example, if your unit is below level 5, you want to try to not face as much as possible a pavilion where it will be very crowded. You have your people there doing Zumba every day, you know, it can be quite disruptive sometimes, right? Not saying that those units are not good. Every unit have like pros and cons, but when it comes to exterior things, I would say facing, right? What is it facing, and the direction it's facing. So like we mentioned earlier, usually north-south facing is what most people prefer, but doesn't mean that not north-south facing means not good. Like for example, you are not north-south facing, but the sun doesn't hit directly into your unit because there are blocks that is further from you that is blocking the sun, then okay, can consider, right? And other exterior things to look out for will be the amenities lah, right? Will be like what are the things that is nearby, usually within 1 kilometer of your unit, your stack, that is good for you, right? Especially if you need, you know, supermarket, you need a market, you need a coffee shop, you need the MRT bus stop, at least a bus stop lah.
But we should have bus stop. Well, I think actually the Tengah area to have bus stop here.
You'll be surprised. Yeah, correct. So, but because newer estates are different. Newer estates have more potential to grow. So in the beginning, the people that move in, like for me, I moved into a new estate 2 years ago, Bidadari. So in the beginning, will be very 辛苦 because there's no hawker center, no shopping mall, no nothing. I got one bus stop downstairs, which is great. But then there's basically nothing there. The nearest coffee shop, I need to walk like 15-20 minutes. Yeah, so but now after about 2 years, right, the estate has slowly come up. You know, there's a mall, hawker center coming soon. You know, so if you're patient a bit, right, things will be better one.
Okay.
For some estate, just give us some estate. Yeah.
If I see a house that I like, right, should I like buy on the spot because there may be other buyers who are trying to buy immediately, or should I like take my time? And what are the strategies to take?
Okay, I think if you like a house, right, the first question that you have to ask yourself is how much you like it. Because if you really, really like it, like you die also cannot do without it, then you have to be prepared to, I guess, maybe outbid certain people and pay a higher price for it lah. Like for example, I have a client, he actually was very willing to pay a very high COV for the house because, and I actually advised him against it. I told him like, Mr. Mr. X, like I think the COV is very high. I actually advise against it because I cannot in good conscience let my client pay that kind of COV. But he told me, JJ, I don't care. I want this house. However much COV, I will also pay. So the reason is because he needs to move now because his rental is coming to an end, and one of his kids is taking A levels this year. So he don't want the process of like moving, right, to affect her studies. So he's willing to pay basically a very high COV to ensure that the move is smooth, no extension, everything like moves into a very well renovated house. Therefore, the price he pay is that he have to pay a quite high COV. So if you are like my client, Mr. X, then you really like the house, you really want the house, and your purpose is so strong. My daughter has to study for A level. I want fast. Then maybe you can go ahead lah. But for most people, right, I think it's worth to consider. It's worth to consider and discuss with your agent or discuss with your family, people that you trust before you go and offer. Because if you are very eager, then the seller agent and the seller can tell. They will try to sell you higher because I mean it's their responsibility to sell as high as possible. It's your responsibility to buy as low as possible, right? So you want to make sure you're neutral when it comes to negotiating for a house lah. So one of the things that I always tell my clients, right, when you go for viewing, you try to be as neutral as possible. Don't show too much interest, but don't show too much disinterest either.
That's what my previous agent told me also.
Yeah. So because if you show too much interest, then the other side know they can talk you, right? But if you show too much disinterest, then the other side might not want to deal with you because you very bochap them. Yeah, and so I have had a colleague who had a client, right, who had this mindset. Like they went into a house, he criticized everything. Like he really liked the house, he wanted to buy the house, but he purposely criticized everything in hopes that the seller will lower the price because this one not good, that one not good, this one broken, that one broken. In the end, the seller don't want to sell to him. The seller said, even if he's the highest bidder, right, I also don't want to sell to him. So don't criticize people's house lah.
Don't burn bridges.
Yeah, correct. Okay. So I would say it really depends on the situation lah. If you really like it, you should go for it. But if you are still sitting on the fence, then you have to be prepared, right, that while you're sitting on the fence, your unit might be taken by someone else who really likes it. So what I always tell my friends and my clients who are looking for a new place is that before we even go house hunting, right, you have to be very clear on 4 things lah. Number 1 is your purpose, because like for example my client Mr. X, right, his purpose is very strong and he knows he can afford, then you go for it. If you know like, okay, I got time, like at most I go and stay with parents first, so purpose is a bit less strong, then then you weigh your options. Number 2 is your financials, because if you know your purpose is strong but you cannot afford to pay a higher price for a very good unit, then also liao, right? So financials and timeline. If you're somebody that's selling to buy, then the timeline matching is very important because most people will need the funds from the old house to flow to the new house and vice versa. Or maybe you're waiting for a big bonus to come in before you buy your first house, then the timeline to match that is also very important. And last but not least, right, is the pricing, the listing price. So when you go, you have to know what you're buying lah. In a sense where usually before people even go down for viewing, their agent or their advisor will actually check what are the past transactions in the unit. Because maybe say this unit is listed at 800,000, you actually can afford it and the timeline is perfect. But and you think that for 800,000 this is actually a good price. But maybe after you check the past transactions, you realize that all the units are transacting at 650k, 680k. That means the chance of you paying a over $100,000 COV, that means you're buying at $100,000 overvalue, is actually very high. Are you willing to do that? You have to know what you're getting yourself into lah. So these 4 things, right? Purpose, financial calculation, timeline, and pricing.
Okay. For me, actually, mine was a lot easier because everything was soon. I didn't have a house previously, so I can just straight away move in, this kind of thing. But yeah, I guess if you are someone who is just in the process of transitioning from older house to a new house, then all this might be a lot more important to take note of.
Actually, if you are buying a new house, it's also very important because, for example, if you're buying a new house, for most people, right, it's a first-timer couple, right? First-timer couple, there will be a lot of things that you will need to get done while the house is in progress. Like go and plan for your ROM, right? Because most of the time, you will not be married yet, right? When plan for ROM, you have to make sure that your financials are in order. For example, all your CPF statements are ready for the HFE and all of those things lah. So a lot of times, right, I've seen many first-timer couples that they come to me, and why they end up coming to someone like me is because they go and see house really, and they just cannot buy a house because certain things like HFE is not ready. Don't know they need to apply HFE, and they want to make an offer, but then they realize that they cannot make an offer because they don't have HFE. Then by the time the HFE come, right, then the house is gone already.
We are now still got HFE.
Yeah, last time HLE. Yeah, so for first-timer couple and people who are buying for the first time, it is, I would say, a bit less complicated because you don't need the money to flow from one house to another. There's no selling, buying, timeline matching.
Yeah.
But the timeline is still extremely important because you need to match it to your life events, the wedding, ROM.
Yeah.
If let's say you cannot get married in time, is there a place that you can stay first before you buy? And things like that lah.
I guess that's all for this episode. If you have any more questions, whether you are buying or not buying a house, you can always chat with him. Our representative is contact down below.
I think a lot of people sometimes they buy a house because of FOMO, because all my friends are getting a house, or my friend tell me I must upgrade, all my friends are upgraded to condo. I think one of the things that I want to emphasize to most people is that don't buy what you don't need to buy lah. If there's no reason to upgrade, then don't upgrade lah. If there's no reason to buy, something that is like doesn't suit your lifestyle, then buy what works for you lah. I think that's the most important. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for coming on to this show.
Thanks, Kelvin.
Yeah, I think I learned a lot more today.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's all. Bye.